Howdy. I've been going to all these this last 2 days, and no one has said that. So, just want it's a failure, I think. When I graduated from college, I never imagined I would be coming back to Texas A&M to make a presentation, maybe to watch a couple of baseball games, but never present in front of a large crowd of engineers. I would like to thank my boss, Rebecca Wells, for this opportunity. I made a point not to utter the word no when it comes to work requests from any of the various bosses I have been employed by. This was almost the exception to the rule, though. I think my mouth was moving faster than my brain in this situation. I am not one to want to get up in front of a large crowd and speak. I was once asked to come up with a devotional at church and present it on Wednesday night. I agreed reluctantly and started working on what I would speak on. I worked for about 5 or 6 days and put something together. I figured I needed to speak for 35 to 45 minutes. The rest of the hour would be taken up by singing a few songs and a couple prayers. It was a good plan. That was the evening that I realized I was not cut out to be a preacher or a professional orator. I spoke for about 5 minutes. We let out on Wednesday service early that night. So when Rebecca asked if I could speak about the uses of ITS solutions in the Atlanta district for about 20 minutes, I thought to myself, I could probably talk about 4 different ITS solutions for about 5 minutes and make it through. But just in case, someone might need to be ready to list an Aggie war hymn, so let's get to it. I skipped it. Okay. What motivates us to go to work every day? I first came to work for TxDOT because of my wife, Dana. She's somewhere in the crowd, maybe. Yeah. And gotten a job with the Atlanta District right out of college, and she was on her way to making money and having free insurance and a decent-looking retirement plus paid vacation. I was for making money. I like money. And having paid the health insurance, I had already paid part of the money I made back to health insurance in a few months, and a free health insurance was looking really good. Who wouldn't like getting paid just to wake up and not having to go to work? Retirement was looking even better. So, to be honest, money was my motivation when I started working for TxDOT. Today, I still like those incentives a lot, but I have a bigger motivation now. 6 years ago, I lost my oldest sister in an automobile accident in one of TxDOT's roads in Tarrant County. One Saturday morning, she decided to go get her nails done in Fort Worth and was headed down US 287, and when she had reached the interchange of I-35 and 287, the traffic was backing up onto 287. It was a known problem spot for backups, and she was last in the queue when an 18-wheeler that was not paying attention hit her from the rear at full speed. After this event, I viewed the things I do differently. It's family. I wasn't sure if anybody was going to get that, but that's family. You'd have to know me. I grew up watching these guys, so that was family. I started participating in church more and took my job more seriously. I viewed her accident as a failure on our part to somehow prevent that event. I know that there is very little we can do to prevent accidents that are caused by distracted drivers. But what I came away with was this. As an organization, we have the ability and duty to make the safest transportation system that we can. I love my job at TxDOT, and I am very grateful for the opportunities I have to make our roads safer. Like other districts, we use traditional methods to increase safety, like safety lighting, signals, striping, raised pavement markings. We also employ traditional ITS systems to increase awareness, like the large roadside DMS. Today, I would like to discuss the other ITS systems that the Atlanta District uses. Before we do that, though, I would like to discuss how our district finds the resources for our ITS program. As a rural district, we don't have a lot of money set aside for ITS. This means we have to be creative and resourceful when it comes to implementing new ITS in our rural districts. For an example, after I started working for Carlos Ibarra in traffic, he came to me one day and asked if I wanted to try something new. I had been doing site surveys and designing signals and illumination for just a few months and was content at that time to being a designer. Carlos proposed that we would start small with one DMS. I had to look up what the DMS was at the time. No idea. I told him yes, I would be interested in designing our first DMS installation. He explained that we could not spend a lot of money on it, which was the main thing. We don't have money, let's not spend what we don't have. We decided to use a previously used 50-foot traffic signal monster arm signal for the installation, instead of a sign bridge like anybody else would use. Then, because of budget restrictions, we bought the DMS from ADCO piece by piece. First, we bought the back panel, then the controller, and then the bricks that house the LEDs. Once we had all the parts, we used a signal maintenance project to install the monster arm on the side of Interstate 20 in Wascom, and then used a separate maintenance project to install the sign. Today, though, we have actual bid items on our RMC signal maintenance contract to install a balance tee over overhead sign bridge and to install the DMS. We no longer have to purchase the DMS part by part. We use the state blanket order instead, which makes it a whole lot easier for us. We've also increased our number of DMS by utilizing someone else's projects, hence the Robin Hood. We have also, on Interstate 30 and Hooks, we were able to add 2 DMS to our system by adding them to the frontage road construction project. We were able to purchase 4 more DMS in 1 year because of money left over at the end of the fiscal year, and then used our routine maintenance contract to install them on the next year's budget. We also utilized the HSIP program to improve safety through curves that have had accidents, which leads us into the first topic, curve guidance. The Atlanta District, now if anybody saw this yesterday, I thought, great, there goes part of my presentation. They're going to take my thunder, but they didn't have a video, so that'll work. Hopefully mine will work. I probably just jinxed myself. Which leads us into the first topic, curve guidance. The Atlanta District had developed a curve warning system over 10 years ago on FM 127. There were a set of curves that the traveling public were having trouble in maneuvering through. As you can see here in the system, included a sign that had a flashing beacon to bring awareness to the public that they were traveling too fast for the curve. The flashing beacon was connected to a radar that would observe the speed and direction of the vehicle approaching the curve, and if the vehicle was traveling at an unsafe speed, the beacon would activate. Along with the flashing beacon, and you can't see it because they're way too small, and that's one of the drawbacks. Along with the flashing beacon, the chevrons in the background had 2 strips of LEDs on the pole that would flash all in unison to bring attention to the signs. This system worked well until chevron signs started being vandalized or ran over. The problem was that they were all connected underground, and when one piece was removed, the system would not work as intended. Today, though, we are purchasing curve warning systems from the different manufacturers, but TAPCO through our state HSIP program. Every year, we have the opportunity to evaluate accidents on our road systems and determine if we can improve safety by installing the flashing chevron systems through the more challenging curves that we have. This slide shows us one of our double curves that we have installed and automated chevrons on. And it doesn't look all that bad, but it has horizontal and vertical curves, as you can see in the video. Oh, maybe. I hope y'all were able to see that it was fine. Okay, good. I'm glad to see you shaking heads. These systems have chevron signs that have LED pixels embedded in the outline of the black part of the chevron. The system consists of 2 chevron signs in the traditional setup for signs, back to back, along with a solar panel and controller box in every signpost. At each end of the system, there's a lead chevron that also consists of a radar box mounted close to the top of the pole. Each pole has two radios that communicate to the lead chevrons and will turn on in sequence. So as in progression through each individual sign in your direction will activate and will guide you through the curve. The speed of the vehicle determines if the chevrons activate at all. When one of the chevrons poles is knocked down or stolen, which happens, for some reason people like to take flashing signs home. The chevrons keep working unless the pole that was taken out was the lead chevron. If only one lead chevron is removed, the other direction will still work. Overall, the public that utilizes these roads have responded well. We have received phone calls from individuals that have seen systems on other roads, and they would want to know if we can install them on their roads that they live on. About the time that we built the first curve warning device, we also bought a weather station and placed it near Monticello Lake for weather and fog monitoring. TXU produces electricity utilizing the Monticello steam station and then releases the hot water back into the lake. It's not a large lake. It's just big enough to do what they need to do. This causes the lake to be warmer than the surrounding air, and this creates fog on the lake and only on the lake. As you can see, FM 127 runs through the middle of the lake, and it sets up a situation where you go from driving down a clear road into thick, foggy soup. The problem is compounded because the bridge over Monticello is narrow and only 2 lanes. There have been collisions due to the fog, so we decided to at least give the traveling public a warning of the approaching fog in time for them to slow down and be more cautious. The system was quite expensive, but back then we were still using Category 1 money from the district to construct projects. The weather station did what all other weather stations do. It sent reports back to the central server that displayed the temperature, humidity, wind speed, and direction, and took snapshots of the surrounding area, and most importantly, fog detection. The system had a device that would constantly monitor for fog. It looked a lot like 2 small cameras with hoods that monitored an area between the opposing cameras and waited for something to come in between. After sensing the fog, the device would report to the software, and then the software would close the relay. The relay was attached to a radio that would send an on or off command to 2 other relays on opposing sides of the lake, and in turn, they would turn on 2 small DMS that would come on and display watch for fog. The small DMS had 2 12-inch LED signal heads that would also blink on and off to draw more attention to the sign. To me, it looked like a square Mickey Mouse with yellow ears. It was about the right proportions. We set it up, turned it on, and waited for the first fog. The first fog came along, and the system did not work. Turns out the weather station that had all the instruments on it was not close enough to the lake to observe the fog. We were only talking 20 feet from the edge of the water. So back to the drawing board. We removed the fog detector and moved it out to the middle of the lake on a 4-inch spun aluminum pole, along with its own solar panel, batteries, and radio for communication with the weather station. We could not run the electricity out to the middle of the lake, but luckily, there's an island out there that was built for one of the high voltage transmission line towers from the power plant. So we waited for the fog again, and when the fog showed up, the system worked like it should. The fog detector was where the fog was, and all the radios worked. It worked great till someone stole the fog detector, along with the solar panel and batteries. After replacing the detector out in the middle of the lake and adding a chain link fence around the system, we were back in business. Later on, someone stole the radio antenna off the west side DMS, and then tragedy. Someone drove behind the guard fence that protected the DMS and ran it and the controller cabinet over on the east side of the lake. Instead of replacing the DMS on the east side, we decided to get away from this aging system and try something else. The cost was going to be very high to replace the DMS, and weather station was starting to show its age. The various sensors were beginning to fail, and the system as a whole was obsolete. We no longer could find parts for it. So Carl Coates and I had started discussing using a camera to detect fog from a distance and then have it trigger a radio that would send an on or off command to 2 other radios, basically the same system, that would in turn activate proposed roadside signs, flashing beacons. We tinkered with the iTerrace cameras, but the manufacturer will tell you that the camera and video card can detect fog, but is not the most reliable about holding the call. I tried using a Bosch PTZ camera, and that did the trick, but you had to have a constant connection to a computer that polled the PTZ every minute to find out if it was detecting fog or not. After looking for a camera that would hold a constant call and work autonomously when fog is detected, we found an ITS Plus camera. It's just go through a different couple manufacturers and find the right one. It doesn't look like much. It's a very small camera attached to a small box. Paul James and I installed the ITS Plus camera and radios on the existing weather station tower that's already out there. The camera monitors the bridge and waits for fog to develop and roll over the road. When the contrast area is fogged out, the video card sends an instant call to the radio, and the radio sends out the on signal for the flashing beacons to activate. There you go. We did all the rebuild for the fog detection using RMC signal maintenance contract and purchasing items off the Smart Buy programs. The cost was considerably less than installing a new weather station and DMS. This leads us into the next subject, the Mickey Mouse. Although it doesn't have its ears anymore, I didn't think we needed it for this situation. The Atlanta District Headquarters DMS. I wanted to call it a yard DMS, but my boss said this would be a little more distinguished. TxDOT and Atlanta District emphasis is safety and how to do our jobs safer than ever before. Some of the ways that safety is communicated to us is through the 5-minute tailgate meetings, the Monday morning safety call, posters posted on bulletin boards, daily stretch and flex, and monthly safety meetings. And during the summer months, we have the 123 Days of Summer campaign that stresses different problems associated with summertime work. I saw an opportunity to add to the safety message one day after fog detection DMS was ran over at Monticello Lake. We still had one good working DMS, and that was programmable and could display smaller messages. I went to my boss, Rebecca, and proposed recycling the small DMS and using it on the Atlanta District grounds to display safety messages as our workers left the parking lot. She liked the idea, and we went to talk to our district engineer at the time, Bob Ratcliffe, and he agreed that it was a good idea. It just snowballed. I was looking for a yes, and that was it, but no, we had to go talk to somebody else, and then somebody else. So, Doug Simmons and I went to Monticello and uninstalled the DMS and controller cabinet and brought it back to the district to be reconditioned and installed. We were able to reuse the I-beam legs that were original to the DMS, but had to purchase new stubs to install into the ground. We also had the building and grounds contractor come out and install power to an outside cabinet and trenched an underground conduit to the DMS for communications and operations of the sign. Jerry Eves and I, guy that's in my office now, it's a whole big story, but he moved in my office and our whole office is overrun with people now. Jerry Eves and I try to come up with catchy slogans every other week to display on the sign. This is a lot harder than it sounds. Our safety messages have to be set in 2 panels of 3 words each, and the words can't be longer than 6 or 7 letters due to sign size. Sometimes we stretch it to 3 panels, but we risk not having the whole message displayed in time for someone leaving the parking lot to be able to read it. Some of these ones that we use during the holidays, we have different ones. One of them is the turkey says buckle buckle. Right, and that's what I want, is somebody to, it sticks in their mind. Hey, I gotta buckle up. Set your brake for Pete's sake, but the question everybody always asks, who's Pete? There's no Pete in Atlanta District. So lights on for safety, day or night. We've been developing a new series of JJ Says. Now, JJ is our safety officer in Atlanta District. You'd have to know JJ, but so JJ Says, and it basically starts out that way, every message. JJ says, do your 360. JJ says, set your brake. JJ says, buckle, buckle, trying to make him more like the turkey. But, we're able to focus the message towards our own people rather than the public at large. We can be more specific in the message and target particular problems that we may be having safety at the time. We also use it for special events like welcoming our DE or the 50th birthday for our Director of Construction. Let's see. So we also, and that's a small ADCO sign that we started out with. ADCO is one of the manufacturers of DMS that we have in our district. Like any other vendor, they like to come by and show us their new wares. They introduced the pickup truck mounted DMS to us, and we could see the usefulness of the system. The trouble was the cost. So we could not simply buy one because it was too expensive not to put it out for bids. So Carlos decided to buy the components separately, and then we would build it when we had gotten all the parts, just like we bought our first roadside DMS. We were able to purchase the parts over time and assemble them after we had received everything. Adam Lundy and I went to work and put the sign together just to realize that it was intended to be installed on a utility bed of a larger truck. It would sit too low in the back bed of the truck if we did not give it some longer legs. We built a frame that attached to the top of the truck bed and then reinforced the frame to the bottom of the bed. These days, though, Jerry Martin, our welder in the shop, builds really nice frames that sit inside the truck bed and attaches to the floor. His design reduces the wind vibration that the original bracing that Adam and I came up with suffered. Let's see. After getting the original together, wired up and working, I pre-programmed about 40 messages that we thought would cover most of our needs when using the DMS in operations. The system is easy to understand and use, and it can be set up so that it has an operator and an admin password, so that the operator is only able to use approved pre-programmed messages from lists with corresponding numbers. I print out the list of messages so that the operator could look up the message they needed and then punch it in, and the message would display. The decision to do it this way was because the operators that were using the truck-mounted DMS are not schooled in the proper use of creating messages. So management did not want them to be able to display made-up messages. I've had a few suggestions from the crews that use the boards for new, more interesting messages for the traveling public, but we'll skip over those. Let's see. Did it again. As you can tell, it works just like any other DMS. It's a little bit bigger than the yard DMS that we have, but it seems to work very well. The first time that we were able to use the sign was in Carthage. We wanted to work on the shoulder of US 59. A PTZ camera that was used for hurricane evacuation routes needed to be replaced. Adam set up his truck with his truck-mounted DMS about 800 feet behind us on the shoulder and on the road, and we went up and we set up our bucket truck off the shoulder next to the PTZ camera. As I was replacing the PTZ, I took a moment to take notice of the traffic all lined up in the left lane, traveling at a reasonable pace. The sign is very noticeable from a long distance away, and the messages can be very specific as to what the traveling public needs to do. Adam had programmed the message to say, "Road work ahead, merge left." Adam later told me that every vehicle but one moved over into the left lane quickly before they even got close to his truck, and maintained that lane until after they had passed our bucket truck. Only one vehicle did not get over and drove right next to us, and Adam said it was one of his RMC striping contractors that he knew. The contractor is the one that always gets us in trouble. The value of the signs were realized by the upper management of the Atlanta district, and now we have 4 more of these truck-mounted DMS. We were able to purchase them complete at the end of the fiscal year when we had some funds available, just like we have done in the past with the DMS. The idea is to have one DMS in each of the maintenance sections for use in emergencies and in daily operations. Wow, that went quick. To wrap up, here are some guidelines to follow when it comes to ITS in a rural district. Never give up. If at first you don't succeed, try again. And you've probably heard all these. Staff, innovative and imaginative group of employees, Don't get frustrated from failures. Learn from them. Don't throw anything away, and repurpose everything you can. And be patient. Be creative when it comes to buying equipment, and don't be afraid to try new technologies. When someone presents a technology as one use, see if you can repurpose it for something else. Never use the words never or always, and try not to say because we have always done it that way. You have any questions? Awesome.
Okay, thank you, James.